I'm being told to hang on.
Okay, I'll turn the mic on now.
Can you hear me?
Should be able to hear me now.
Brilliant. Oh, it's all right. I'll just do that all again then.
Yeah.
So this is the Ivory Lacquer. This is the new products that we've been developing. Terry's kicking himself up behind the camera. This is the new products we've been developing. More specifically, I've been working on developing this. So I've been in the studio testing different samples and making sure we've got a product that we're happy to produce and sell to you guys. So this is our based off the ebonizing lacquer. So both of these are tinted lacquers. So they're very similar to the acrylic gloss lacquer, except they're tinted. Obviously, the ebonizing lacquer is black, as you know, and the ivory lacquer is white. So we'll be showcasing this today. And I've got a couple of different projects I'm going to try. I'll just show you it on different types of woods. I'm going to show it with the liming brush, and then I've got a piece on here, and I'm going to show you how to do this effect here, so this rustic. If we switch the camera 3, there we go. I'm going to show you how to do this effect here, where we've got the ebonizing lacquer and the ivory lacquer together to sort of create this nice textured look. And we're going to do black on white, and then we're going to do white on black as well. So hopefully it'll be fun. This is the only time I've ever done this technique on this little test piece, so hopefully it all goes smoothly, but I'm sure it will. Yeah, so I will get some cardboard down so I don't make a mess. And we'll have a look at the ivory lacquer in action. So I've got a nice piece of beech here. Yeah, it's just been run through the planer. It's not been sanded at all, although you probably would want to sand it if this was a project. Obviously, we're not going to turn this one, but I can show you I can show you the effect that the Ivory Lacquer is going to give. So give it a good shake. I'll just do a little test spray on the side here. And you can see it's a nice bright white color. It's not a translucent white, so you can't see the the original color underneath it, which will become very apparent when we get to this piece in a while and we put the ivory lacquer over the ebonizing lacquer. You'll see how much it just obliterates the color. So I'll do a nice little spray here. Nice light coats. We don't want to go too heavy. If you put too much on, it can start to run, especially if you've got a piece on the lathe like this. And also it dries a lot quicker if it's thinner. You're much better putting 2 or 3 thin coats on than you are trying to build it up in one coat with a big thick layer. So that will already be starting to dry. So I'll put a little bit more on. And you can see how already after a couple of light coats, how we've already got a very, very bright white effect. And this is really, really good if you want to put the rainbow waxes on top of. So the rainbow waxes, they're pretty solid color, but if you've got a darker piece of wood or a piece, you want to make sure that you've got true colors almost. The wood isn't going to affect it. Then you can put the ivory lacquer on, then the rainbow wax, and you'll get some really nice colors from it. And you can also put the iridescent paint over the ivory lacquer. Yeah, I thought you could, just double checking. But yeah, the iridescent paint obviously is translucent, so having the white base underneath it will make it a lighter color. So there we go. We've got that one. If we that one, or camera 2, is it? There we go. So you can see there if I catch it in the light, it doesn't obliterate the grain. So we've obliterated all of the color, but like the ebonizing lacquer, we're still able to see the grain of the wood through. You just try to
hold it still for heaven's sake.
You try to evade the cameras. Oh, I got you again. So this is a piece of beech. Not really got a huge amount of grain to it, and you can still see the grain through there, showing through slightly, but we're going to try it on a piece of ash as well. So I picked this piece. It's got a little bit of an angle to it. This was going to be a kitchen door, like a cupboard door at one point, so it's got a groove in it. So hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit of texture on there and what it looks like on slightly different surfaces. So let's have a look. I'm going to grab the liming brush for this because this is a piece of ash. We're going to open up the grain, and then when we put the lacquer on, it will conform to the surface of the wood, and hopefully we should be able to see a bit more of that texture of the wood shining through. So liming brush, go back and forwards along the grain. You could use a wire wheel to do this. The reason we like the liming brush is because the bristles are a lot less aggressive, so it's not going to scratch up the wood, whereas a wire wheel is going to make big grooves in the wood. So shouldn't need too long. If you spend a little bit longer on this, you're going to get a little bit more of the grain out, but after a few seconds, you'll have already got the majority of the grain removed. And you might not be able to see it on camera, but I can see in person there's a visible difference between the bit that I've not done and the bit that I have done, but I don't think you'll pick that up on the camera. So I will do sort of a little bit all the way across so you can see the difference. So a couple of light passes. There we go, and you should be able to see, especially on this area here, if we switch to camera 2, we can really see that, yeah, you can see there, the grain is really coming through, and it's a really nice effect. You know, rather than just using a paint or something, which is going to fill the grain and it's going to remove all of the texture, the ebonizing lacquer will conform to the wood and give you that really nice effect where the grain is showing through. What did I call it? Ivory lacquer, yeah, ebonizing lacquer does it as well, but so we'll pop that to the side. We can have a look at that again in a moment if we want. When it's dry, I'll put another coat on maybe. But for now, we'll start on this piece here. So what we're going to do to create this this effect here, we're going to put ivory lacquer on first. Then we're going to put a coat of something to seal it. So in this case, we're going to use one of the acrylic lacquers. I'm going to go with the satin lacquer, and that's because this is almost like a sort of rustic effect. So having it a bit glossy wouldn't really fit, I don't think, with the technique. And that's just almost going to give us a slight buffer. So when we then put the ebonizing lacquer on the top, we can sand it back through the ebonizing lacquer down to the sealer, and it will mean that the ebonizing lacquer will stay in the grain and the ivory lacquer will stay on the surface, and it's going to give us this nice textured look. So we'll start off with the ivory lacquer. So give it a good shake, and we're just going to do some light coats across the piece. Ideally, you would open the grain on this with the liming brush, but I forgot to do that, so it's all right. We won't do it for this one, but I'll do it on the other side to show you the difference with the effect. So a little bit more. Hopefully that should be starting to be fairly even there. Not quite, it needs a little bit more, but we'll give that a second to dry. Now, this is a piece of ash as well. It's ash is a good choice for this because it's got a very open grain. Likewise, oak is another good choice because it has an open grain as well. This effect isn't really going to work as well with something like with a closed grain like the beech that we were just using, because the first coat is basically very flat, and then if you put the second coat on and then sand it back, you'll basically just sand all of the second coat off. So I'll pop a little bit more on. And the colour that you put on first is going to be the main colour. So if we look at this piece here, this had the ivory lacquer on first, and then the ebonizing lacquer on second, and the colour that goes on first is going to be the stronger colour, the one that covers more of the piece. So got the ivory lacquer on there. Now we'll give it a little bit longer. We're going to go with the acrylic satin lacquer on top of this. And again, because it's a lacquer, it's quite a thin coat, so it's going to conform to the wood and not fill the grain like something would. You know, if it's come out of a bottle, chances are it's going to fill the grain, whereas the aerosol. Oh. Mel decided it was a good idea to lean on the light switch. Yeah, so
Nathanael.
Yes.
Martin Shepherd has asked, did you use a sealer first? And I know that you didn't, mostly for speed and because we didn't want to fill the grain in too much. But did you want to elaborate on that, or have I covered that up for you already?
No, so you could use a sealer. I probably wouldn't if you're trying to create this technique, just because, like Terry said, it will fill the grain. Not massively, but the more coats you've got on there, the more it's going to fill the grain. I'd probably go with I'd definitely go with an aerosol sealer if I was doing this technique, either the cellulose or the acrylic. But you can put the ivory lacquer and the ebonizing lacquer straight onto the bare wood, and you'll get a good effect. Hopefully that answers the question. So should be starting to dry now. You can see there's a little bit of patchiness, but not a huge amount. That's only because I put a light coat on for the purposes of the demo. I'd probably put another light coat on if we weren't, sat here waiting for it to dry. But you can see it does quite a good job of completely wiping out the colour. So do a coat of the acrylic satin lacquer. Now we don't need a massively thick coat. Quite a thin coat should do the job. And the reason we do this, in theory, we don't need to do this. But what happens is when we sand back the ebonizing lacquer to reveal the ivory lacquer underneath, if you sand too much, so that they're very, very thin coats, and if you sand a little bit too much, then it'll be very easy to sand through the ivory lacquer as well, revealing the wood underneath. So by putting the acrylic satin lacquer on, or acrylic gloss lacquer, by sanding it back, we've got a little bit more of a buffer in there. So if we sand through the acrylic satin lacquer, if we sand a little bit too deep, we're still going to have the ivory lacquer underneath that, which will, which means we will still have the effect. So give that a little bit longer. And then we'll go to the ebonizing lacquer. Now, I did a demo. Oh, we could do an ad break. Yeah, I'm being told we're doing an ad break.
Well, give it a bit more time for it to dry.
Just so we've got a bit of time for it to dry, yeah. So let's cut to the adverts. Oh, we've got to find it, okay.
Time flies by and I see beyond the disguise. Look into the sun's eyes. Love happens. And all the world is bright again, and now the sky is light again, and all the world is bright again. Home is where we're loving. Snow falls on this warm sky. Hilltops on this sunrise. Hold on to the smile. See beyond your eyes. Forgive and just start over. Start over. All the world's bright again, and now sky is light again, and all the world is bright again.
Hello, welcome back. So yeah, if hopefully you stayed through the ad break, if you did, then you'll have seen about the Weekender, which is a great event, not one to miss. It'd be great to see you there. But for now, this piece has dried, or is almost completely dry, so we can put the ebonizing lacquer on top. So this is a product, of course, that you will probably have all seen before. If we switch the camera to. Lovely. Then we will see. So a few light coats. And then we can put a slight bit more on. And again, we could do a heavy coat here, but it's just going to take longer to dry. There we go. So we'll give that a second. I've got some sanding pads here. Oh, that's a really black effect actually on the camera. So I've got some sanding pads here. This is the net abrasive that's on here. So I'm going to start with 180. Obviously after it's dry, we'll start with the 180 and see how it goes. But we can always go down to a 120 if it's not cutting through it. So I like to use probably prefer to use a sanding pad for this. You could do it by hand, but the risk is that you sand it unevenly. And I'm going to sand this with the lathe stops as well. We could turn the lathe on and sand it that way, but the problem is you don't really have a lot of control. If you do it with the lathe stationary, you can see where you're removing the material, and you can focus on specific parts. If there's more color on there, you can sand that through. So it just gives you more control really, and I'm sure it would work with the lathe running. But as well, while the lathe is running, if there are any visible sanding marks, especially sanding at a grit this low, they're going to be in rings, which is going to be a lot harder to hide. Whereas if we're sanding with the grain, then it's going to the sanding marks are almost going to disappear. I went to a demo last night in Ely, and I took some ebonizing lacquer with me, and it was the first 3 people took one each, so that was quite nice, and I sold out, and so I'll need to bring more next time. But that was good fun. So let's have a look. Give it a little bit longer, and just while it's drying as well, I can take it off the lathe and show you. So you can see how, you can see it's slightly wet there still actually, but you can see how the ebonizing lacquer is it's a product that I'm sure you're all familiar with, how it's completely obliterated the white color. And likewise, when we put the white over the ebonizing lacquer in a little bit, then you'll see it will do a very similar thing. Need a little fan here really just to dry it off. Nearly there though. So
I'll bring my hairdryer in next time. I don't need it anymore.
So, oh, I've got a bit of a fingerprint on there, but that's all right. Yeah, I'm sanding it off. It's all right. And while we wait for that to dry, actually, I'll just get this piece back out that we did earlier, where we did use the liming brush, and I'll spray some ebonizing lacquer on here as well. So in a little bit, maybe while we're waiting for something else to dry, we can sand this back and see what it would look like on a flat piece of wood as well. So we'll spray a coat of the satin to begin with. And I will do it all the way across, and that will give you an opportunity to see the difference between the bit that's been done with the liming brush and the bit that's been done without the liming brush. So relatively thick. You don't have to do it that thick, but the thicker coat this middle coat is, the more room you're going to have to work with when you're trying to sand back the layer. But then again, you don't want it to be too thick because it will fill the grain and you won't get that effect. But we will pop this to the side and come back to that in a moment. It's almost there now. For those of you who read this week's newsletter, you may have seen the segment about my chestnut wood turning smock, which I was very excited to have finished for the first time. You may notice that I'm not wearing my chestnut wood turning smock, and that's because it's currently a few hundred miles away, definitely, over in Austria, because I took it to Neuriter for my demo, and it's not back yet. So I've got my personal smock on, which I use for my demonstrations. So let's have a look. should be dry enough now. We'll find out fairly quickly if it's not. So we'll start with the 180. We're just sanding with the grain, and you can see already some of the light, or maybe you can't, but I can see some of the lighter colour is already starting to show through. I'm probably going to switch to the 240 here actually, just so it's a little bit nicer of a finish. So the ebonizing lacquer is a very, you can see it starting to come through there. The ebonizing lacquer, because it is a lacquer, it will show up the scratches from something this low. So that's why one of the reasons it's important to sand with the grain. And now I think about it, actually, when I did this the first time, I might have used my electric sander, which will make it a bit quicker, but that's okay. Just switched out for a lower grit. We're back on the 120 here, just so we can get through it a little bit quicker. And to start with, it's not looking particularly great, but as we get a little bit further through, that effect will start to show through. And especially while the lacquer is slightly wet, you know, ideally you want to probably leave this for at least a few hours to dry. But you know, we don't have a few hours unless you want to stick around all day. So what you've got to be careful of is this sandpaper, or any sandpaper, you've got to be careful it doesn't sort of take the lacquer off and get stuck in the paper. Now the net abrasive is better than most because it will let the dust through. But with any sandpaper, what can happen is it can get stuck in the paper, and then you're almost rubbing the lacquer, like a small piece of the lacquer, across the surface, which can cause it to sort of smudge a little bit and not be quite as nice of an effect. And you have got to be especially careful near the edges, just because it will round over quite easily. You can see here, just around this edge where it's sanded through to the wood underneath. So it's starting to get there now. I probably won't do the whole thing, just because you can start to see the effects coming through. But I'll get a good portion of it done, and hopefully that will be enough for you to see what's going on and to see the technique. So if I were doing this on a piece, what I would probably do is I'd maybe like a wide rimmed bowl. And then I'd do the technique on the outside, then I'd hollow it out, and probably finish off around the outside as well. And then if you did go over a little bit, you can see here slightly and around the edge, as the sandpaper's come off the side of the piece, it's rounded it slightly, and it has cut all the way through back to the wood. But if you do this technique and then hollow the piece out, then you'll be able to cut away that that bit there where you've gone through. Now you can see it has gone a little bit paler in a couple of spots, and that's just because I sanded a little bit too deep. So you do really want to, and you see there as well, very slightly.
I think, to be fair on you as well, Nathaniel, you would normally put a second coat of the ivory lacquer on to make sure it's properly covered. We are doing this a little bit quicker than we would normally do.
Yeah, it's normally when you're doing demonstrations, it's all a little bit rushed just because you don't have the time to be sat around. But yeah, you know, as long as you get an idea for the effect when you try it at home, you can take a little bit more time on it. So a little bit with the 240 just to clean it up, and you can see there we've got that nice effect, and that's without the liming brush as well. When we use the liming brush in a minute, you'll see the grain will be opened up a little bit more, the lacquer will go deeper into the wood, and then we'll end up with more of a pronounced effect on that, is hopefully, that's the hope. So we'll spin this around. And we'll try going the other way. So we'll start with the ebonizing lacquer, and then we'll go over it with the ivory lacquer. But we'll do the liming brush first. Got to remember the liming brush. So making sure we do this with the grain. If you do it across the grain, what's going to happen is the bristles won't be able to get in there. So with the grain, doesn't need a huge amount. And it's just really going to open up that wood and let the lacquer get all the way in there. There we go. So we'll start with the ebonizing lacquer. So a nice sort of medium coat on there. You can see that's obviously very quickly taken all the colour of the wood out. And in a moment, when this is dry and we put a coat of the satin lacquer on again, then we can put the ebonizing lacquer, sorry, the ivory lacquer over the ebonizing lacquer, and we're going to be able to see really how well the ivory lacquer covers up that colour. I'm going to keep getting them mixed up. I'm going to keep calling it ebonizing lacquer for ages. So I'll give it a little bit longer. Now would be a good time to cut to a commercial if we can.
Yeah.
You want to do that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's another ad for our wood turning weekend, I'm afraid, but this is the one we had a lot of fun with this one. So if you haven't seen it, I hope you'll enjoy it. If you have seen it, then apologies, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Enjoy. Yeah, just to say, we know that little clip goes on for a while, but we just had too much fun with it, so apologies for that. But Nathaniel's been busy during the ad break getting stuff done, so I'll let him carry on.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, I've put a light coat of the acrylic satin lacquer now over the ebonizing lacquer. I've come up with a very good technique to make it dry quicker, which I will show you in a moment. So that's dry on there now. So we'll go with the ivory lacquer, and hopefully we're really going to see how well the ivory lacquer covers whatever's underneath it. So we will start with a light coat, just for the sake of drying times. But you can see with just a very, very light coat, it's already nearly completely covered the ebonizing lacquer underneath it. There we go. So we've almost got just from a quick coat, we've almost got complete coverage there, covering up all of the ebonizing lacquer. Now, on this specific project, you've got to be careful that you do a relatively thick coat, because you want the ivory lacquer to get into the grain. All this ivory lacquer on the surface, or any lacquer that's on the surface, is going to be sanded off. It's in the grain where you really want the lacquer to stay. So you do want to make sure you get enough on there. And you're almost trying to fill the grain by doing this, just because that's obviously where it's going to stay once we've sanded it off. So you get to see my ingenious method for making it dry quicker, which is to get a bit of cardboard in there and blow it. So we can turn the lathe on as well, which will help it go a little bit quicker. So we were in the ad break, me and Terry were just discussing what makes it dry quicker. So a hairdryer will obviously make it dry quicker. And that's not so much because of the heat. The heat will help, but it's the airflow, and having fresh air next to the piece will help the solvent in the lacquer, or in what is on the surface. It will help it evaporate into the air, because it will always have fresh air for the solvent to evaporate into. So a little bit more, and hopefully that should be getting close to dry. And then we can start to sand it back and see the effect we're going to get. Oh, that's quite interesting. So put a little bit, not too thick of a coat, because I put quite a thick coat on and then spun the lathe. It has started running a little bit, but it won't matter for doing this. But you know, if you're doing this at home and you are using the ivory lacquer as a final coat on something, you do want to make sure to let it dry before you turn the lathe on. So we'll give it a little bit longer. That's pretty dry already. Good catch. So a little bit more, and then we can start to sand it off. Now, I will make sure I flick out all the dust from the net abrasive, just so I don't have any bits of black from sanding previously that are going to get stuck in the grain. And then hopefully we'll be able to sand off the ivory lacquer. So starting with the 120, and again sanding with the grain. And you can see already we're starting to get some of that ebonizing lacquer show through. And hopefully we'll start to see that effect in a minute. Now, I probably should have waited a little bit longer for the ivory lacquer to dry, just because I think it will pick some of the wet bits off and it will smudge slightly, but hopefully you'll still get to see the effect.
Daniel,
Yes.
Nigel's asked, would steel wool bring it off like sandpaper? What do you think?
It might, to a point. If you had a low coarse steel wool, it probably would start to clear it off. If you had a very thin piece that you could put some pressure behind, it's probably more likely to do it. With something like this, you can put quite a lot of pressure on the paper, and it's gonna help sand through that surface. Whereas steel wool might not quite have the same effect. I mean, I don't know. It might do. Give it a go. See if it works. But I suspect sandpaper will be a better option for this. But, you know, I don't see any reason why steel wool wouldn't work either.
I suspect the abrasive will be more efficient at doing it, to be honest. But
Yeah.
Worth a try, Nigel. Let us know.
There we go. So we're starting to get through the ivory lacquer here. And you can see that effect is starting to show through. That was where one of the thicker bits was, so it's just almost rubbed it off straight away because it wasn't dry yet. Switch to a fresh bit. And again, you probably would want a thicker coat of the base coat on here, so you probably do 2 or 3 coats of the ebonizing lacquer. If you did more coats of the ebonizing lacquer, you potentially wouldn't need to use the acrylic satin lacquer in the middle, and that's because the ebonizing lacquer will be a thicker coat, or the ivory lacquer, whatever's underneath, meaning it would take more to sand through it, and you're going to be able to stop before you sand too much. So just working my way around. Hopefully this thicker bit will be almost dry by now, so we can sand a little bit on there. And sanding it, now I think about it, sanding across the grain probably would have a better effect here, because the sandpaper isn't going to be able to clear out the grain as easily. But with sanding with a low grit on a lacquer, you do have to be careful you don't end up with a load of sanding marks. So a little bit more on there. I'm starting to get there now. You can see it's coming through quite well. Now you probably switch to a fresh bit of sandpaper at this point. If you can, if we cut to camera 2, you'll see here how it's almost gone a little bit grey. if I take that off, you see how it's almost stained slightly. So what that is, it's the ebonizing lacquer that's coming off and the dust is getting stuck on the paper, and it's causing it to be slightly discoloured, which is why we're starting to get a bit of this sort of grey that's coming in, because the dust is it's almost the grey dust of the ebonizing lacquer and the ivory lacquer that are sort of staying on the wood. So a little bit more. We will do a quick test. Did I put another coat on this? Oh no, I didn't. Just before we finish that off, we'll quickly put some ebonizing lacquer on here, just so I can show you what this technique would look like on a flat piece. So a little bit of the ebonizing lacquer, and again, trying to make sure it's in the grain is the important bit. There we go. So we'll give that a minute. And we'll just finish off this here. So we could spend a little bit longer on this if we wanted to. If I take this off and show you, you can see it has gone a little bit patchy where I sanded a little bit too deep. Now, having more coats of ebonizing lacquer on before is going to prevent that because you're not going to be able to sand through it. But where the ivory lacquer has stayed in the grain, it's quite a nice sort of rustic effect. You can see it on there as well. That sort of effect, and that would be the equivalent of this, and it would look more like this test piece that I did if we'd have used the liming brush on this side to open up the grain. So it's do a little bit of experimentation if you do try this. Give it a couple of goes on a test piece, make sure that you're comfortable with the technique. To be honest, this is the first time trying this since the test piece that I've done, so we're learning together, but it's it's always good fun. But do a little bit of experimentation for yourself, and make sure that you're happy with it, because you don't want to spend ages on a bowl and then or something, and then because you've not practiced the finishing, then it goes wrong. So give this a little bit longer.
I think what might be an idea, Nathanael, is after the demo, is to do another couple of pieces, but be able to take your time on them, which applying lacquers and getting them to dry. And I love your new technique. That's really interesting. But it's always going to be a bit of a rush. So we can redo those afterwards. The technique is sound, and just take a little bit more time and show the proper finished effects.
Yeah, so we'll I will, like Terry says, I'll do some of these off camera when I can wait, long enough for it to dry, and then we'll probably put those in the newsletter. So if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, then subscribe to the newsletter so you can see the finished results. We might even put them on the Instagram or something as well, if we feel like it. So I've got another quick story while this finishes off drying. So you may notice that the ivory lacquer has a silver lid rather than what you would presume, which would be a white lid. Now, when we were choosing the lid colour, we were debating what to do, and we didn't want to go with the same colour as a product that already existed. So our acrylic gloss lacquer, acrylic sanding sealer, which is here, already has the the white lid. Now, we could put the white lid on the ivory lacquer and it looks nice, but then what we're going to do with the acrylic sanding sealer, the original idea is to have the colour transitioning up and have that the colour of the cap. So when Terry was designing these long ago, he matched the colour of the cap to the colour of the bottle. But the problem with the acrylic sanding sealer, it's a purple base, but it's really hard to get hold of purple caps. You can do it, and I did talk about this in my most recent newsletter that I did a couple of weeks ago. The difficulty is the minimum order on them is so high. To try and get them, we'd need tens of thousands of caps, which is not really feasible. So we had to go with the white on the acrylic sanding sealer, and that leaves us with the nice silver, shiny silver colour for the ivory lacquer.
I think it works pretty well, actually.
I think it works pretty well as well. You can tell who that we chose it, can't you? Yeah, so still a little bit wet on here, but we can give it a go just on this corner. Oh, actually, is it easier if I spin it that way? Doesn't really make a difference, does it? So you see where it's starting to come through on the edges here. You'd want to be really careful if you're doing something with an angle on it like this, not to sand too much off the edge, because you are going to sand through to the wood. So might be best without the sanding pad, actually, just for this piece. And if I don't use a sanding pad, it's going to allow me to have even more control, because the sandpaper will bend to my finger and I can just sand exactly where I need to. So we are doing it on quite a small area here, just because the rest of it isn't dry. So you're not going to get the full effect, but hopefully you'll be able to see that it is staying in the grain. So you can see it coming through there if we cut to camera 2. You can see we've got the, yeah, I'm getting a nod from Terry, so you can see it. You've got the ebonizing lacquer in the grain and the ivory lacquer that's showing through from underneath. So there we go. Hopefully we learned something. I know I did. But yeah, that's the chestnut ivory lacquer, brand new product.
That's great, Nathaniel. Thank you very much indeed. Been really enjoyable. We will remake some of those pieces and spend a little bit more time on them, especially the drying times. Always a problem when you're trying to do a demonstration to get get stuff to dry as quick as you want it to. So we'll certainly get some pieces and get some photographs done. Not sure in reality if we'll have time to get them in this week's newsletter.
We'll see.
Man, give me a chance, but we'll get that done. So, Nathanael, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to everyone out there who's been watching with us, and we will see you again soon, I hope.
Thanks for watching.
Take care. Cheers now. Bye-bye.